Imagine a city so wealthy that money never needed to leave it. Imagine doctors, lawyers, business owners, and families all living within walking distance of one another. Imagine banks owned by black people, newspapers written by black people, hospitals run by black professionals. Now imagine that entire city being erased, not over decades, not by economic decline, but in less than 24 hours. This was not a myth. This was not a rumor. This place existed. It was called Black Wall Street, and in 1921, it was destroyed. This is the story of Greenwood, Oklahoma, and what really happened. After the Civil War, millions of formerly enslaved people faced a new reality. Freedom existed in law, but opportunity did not exist. Equally, across the United States, segregation hardened. Jim Crow laws restricted where black Americans could live, work, shop, and travel. But in some places, black communities responded by building inward. They created their own schools, churches, businesses, financial systems. One of the most successful of these communities would rise in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Greenwood was founded in the early 1900s by black settlers, many of whom were descendants of formerly enslaved people. The land was intentionally purchased and developed as a black community. By design, Greenwood was separate from white Tulsa. But separation did not mean poverty. By 1921, Greenwood had over 300 black-owned businesses, grocery stores, hotels, theaters, and restaurants, doctors' offices and law firms, its own school system, a hospital, a public transportation network. Money circulated within Greenwood multiple times before ever leaving the district. This created generational wealth. Booker T. Washington would later refer to Greenwood as Negro Wall Street. Today, it is more commonly remembered as Black Wall Street. Greenwood's prosperity was not accidental. Several factors contributed to its growth. First, segregation forced black residents to rely on black businesses. Second, land ownership allowed families to build equity rather than rent indefinitely. Third, Tulsa's booming oil industry created demand for skilled labor and services. And finally, Greenwood had a highly educated population. Teachers, entrepreneurs, professionals. Greenwood represented something rare in early 20th century America, a self-sustaining black economy. Tulsa itself was growing rapidly, and not everyone welcomed Greenwood's success. Resentment simmered beneath the surface. Economic jealousy, racial hostility, and a national rise in white supremacist activity. In 1921 alone, dozens of lynchings occurred across the United States. It was within this atmosphere that a single accusation would change everything. On May 30th, 1921, a 19-year-old black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland entered an elevator in downtown Tulsa. A white elevator operator, Sarah Page, was also inside. Something happened in that elevator. What exactly occurred has never been proven, but shortly afterward, Rowland was accused of assault. Police arrested him. The next day, the local newspaper ran a sensational headline. Rumors spread quickly, and by nightfall, a white mob gathered outside the courthouse, demanding Rowland be lynched. Black residents of Greenwood were aware of Tulsa's history. They knew what often followed accusations like this. Armed black veterans from World War I went to the courthouse to protect Rowland. A confrontation followed. A shot was fired. No one knows by whom, but within minutes, chaos began. Between May 31st and June 1st, 1921, Greenwood was attacked. White mobs poured into the district. Homes were looted. Businesses were burned. Families were forced into the streets. Eyewitnesses later reported airplanes circling overhead. Some claimed incendiary devices were dropped onto rooftops. Law enforcement either stood aside or actively participated. The Oklahoma National Guard was deployed, but instead of stopping the violence, many black residents were detained. By morning, Greenwood was in ruins. This event is now known as the Tulsa Race Massacre. When the fires stopped, Greenwood was gone. More than 1,200 homes destroyed, hundreds of businesses lost. Up to 300 black residents killed, thousands were left homeless. Insurance companies refused to pay claims. No one was charged. No compensation was given. The city rebuilt itself around Greenwood, but Greenwood itself was never restored to its former prosperity. For decades, the massacre was erased. It was not taught in schools. Newspapers removed archives. Survivors were discouraged from speaking. Many families carried the trauma in silence. It would take nearly a century for mass graves to be officially investigated. And even today, justice remains unresolved. Black Wall Street proves something important. Black wealth existed. Black excellence existed. Black self-sufficiency existed. And it was destroyed deliberately. This was not a riot. This was not chaos. This was the systematic erasure of a community. Greenwood was not an exception. It was a warning, and its story still matters today. This was Black Wall Street, and this is what really happened. Many people were never taught this in school. If this is your first time hearing this story, you are not alone.